Hi, I'm Meg Ruffman. Today I'm going to start off by showing you how to equalize the leg lengths on a stool, table, or chair that rocks. After that I'll demonstrate what can be done if your drawers are perpetually sticky. Finally we'll go into the workshop where I'll show you a tip that'll help if your drawers have a habit of going missing. And let's get to it then, bearing in mind the Repair to Remember motto, how hard can it be? I'm not sure if this applies to you or not. You may not have this problem. Ready? Okay, if that's not happening to any of the chairs in your house, then man, you're in good shape. But if it is, it drives you nuts. So today I'm going to show you how to equalize the legs on chairs or stools or tables, anything, really. And in a way that you won't end up with really, really short chairs and stools and tables, which is sometimes what happens in shop with beginning students. They end up with stools that are really milking stools. And that's not easy going from a tall one. So I'm going to show you how to equalize the leg length. So the first thing you have to do is figure out which is the high leg, and often there are two. In this case, it's teetering back and forth on this axis. And sometimes you really have to be holistic about this, because sometimes the problem is that there's a rung loose, and as soon as you squeeze the legs together, it's fine. That's not the problem on this thing, though. So the first thing to do is get yourself some of these shims. They come in a little package like this, and they're milled so that they just break right apart like that. And I just like to trim them up because they always have rough edges. Don't ask me why I like to do that. I just have been in a whittling mood lately. And you know, when you're in that mood, nobody should argue with you, because you've got the knife, really. Okay, so there we have it. All right, so what I do is I make a decision, and you can look at the top of the thing and see, well, the whole seat's warped on this thing, so it kind of doesn't matter what I do. I don't know if you can see that, but the seat is a bit wonky and twisted. So just for fun, I'm going to go with this leg. I'm going to shim this leg, and that puts all the other three on the ground. Of course, you need to be working on it on a level surface. So you shift the shim around until you find the right angle for it. Because you see, chairs and stools in particular, let me just show you for a second. You know, it would be easy to think you could just cut it off like on this angle, but you can't. They have that, because they're splayed, they have a different angle. So pay attention to that also when you're shimming the thing. Okay, where were we here? Okay, so you don't want to overdo it, but just about there is good. All right, and then if you don't have a carpenter's pencil, and we don't have a whole lot of space here. This isn't a really exaggerated example. So a carpenter's pencil might be, which are the flat kind, which you could use to, what we're going to do is scribe around the rest of the legs at the same level that this leg is off the ground. And a carpenter's pencil in this case would be a little bit too big. So I'm going to use a normal pencil, and I've shaved it down here so that it has a nice flat surface. Just shaved it down with my whittling knife. It's a whittling kind of a day. And so the trick is to find the height with your special pencil, to find the height that the bottom of this leg reaches to off the table. So it's right there. So I've got my finger here, and I know that the pencil is right at the right mark. So then I just bring the pencil over to the other legs, and I scribe a line around the bottom. And it's kind of tricky, and this is where having a nice flat surface really helps. If you're working on something rough, it can throw you right off with your line. out at the edge here, there's hardly any to take off. I have to take more off the inside part of the leg. Okay, and then I'll come around and do the other 3 legs, and then I'm ready to take some of the material off. Okay, so that's all 3 of those done. And now, depending on how exaggerated the wonkiness is, look at the, now I need to plane the whole top of the thing. Would you look at, good thing we don't have to sit on this upside down or we'd really be mad. See, it's not a whole lot of material to take off. And so there are a couple of different ways to go about this. You could use a rasp like this, which is it takes away, I'll show you. I'll just show you. It takes away the material. Let me just tilt it a little. Pretty quickly. It's a fairly coarse rasp, so. And again, I just want to do it to the line. See how much I've taken off already? So this could be a good tool to use, especially because you're cutting across the grain. So you could sand it if you didn't have anything better, or if you had a more exaggerated, if you had like a 1/4 of an inch or something to take off, you could use a saw like this. This is a Japanese saw, and the teeth are set really close together, so it makes a delightful fine cut. And the neat thing about Japanese saws is that they cut on the pull stroke rather than the push stroke, which is what North American saws do. So you have quite a bit more control with it. I won't show you on this because I just don't I don't have enough, I won't be able to get quite enough purchase in the wood because the line is so thin. But it's a lovely saw to use, and quite a different feeling once you get used to it. Okay, there's just the tiniest little bit. So I'll take the 2, this leg and this leg, down a tiny bit more. This is where you can really kill it by going too far. So it's important at this point to keep flipping it and trying it again. Huh? Do you hear anything? No. That's because it's working now. Okay? So that's, those are the tricks. And oh, while we're at it, I'm going to put these felt things on the bottom of the stool so that I can move it around without scratching the floor. If these don't stick for you, there are 2 reasons maybe why. One reason could be that the wood is kind of mungy and dirty, and therefore the adhesive doesn't really have a chance because all it really adheres to is the mung and the dirt, and then it falls off pretty quickly. So what you can do is either sand the bottoms a little bit before you apply these, or you can use a little bit of silicone caulking, the clear stuff, and it acts like glue. It's great. That's if you just don't want to be bothered sanding. Which, you know, why should you want to be bothered, really? Maybe you're just not in that kind of a sanding mood. Okay, so that's it for equalizing the chair lengths, and then, of course, there are other problems with stools, but that's another show. Equalizing the leg lengths on a chair or stool or table doesn't have to be an exercise in humiliation and then the whole family has to sit with a table that comes up to their knees. So just use some restraint. Irritation level, I'm thinking fairly low. I'd like to talk to those of you who occasionally get your drawers stuck. Now, this is a serious problem in some households, and in mine, it's not that bad. Okay, the drawers are usually not stuck at all. But this one is, and just check. It just, like all these others, just float, which is how drawers should be. But this one is always kind of awkward. So I'm going to show you how to take a little bit of material off a drawer so that it floats effortlessly. What happens often in humid weather especially is that the wood changes shape a little bit. So sometimes your drawers only stick in the summertime. Go figure. All right, so this particular set of drawers is a very simple construction. Sometimes the drawer face itself extends wider than the actual drawer itself, in which case there's one rule, which is you must never plane off the bottom or take any material off the bottom of the drawer edges, because what it does is it drops the whole drawer, so that usually what happens if this was one of those extended faces is that that face would now, it wouldn't fit properly anymore because it's dropping lower and it would hit the face below it. I think you can imagine what I'm talking about. So that's just something to remember. In this case, the drawer isn't sitting properly in the case. It's twisted a little bit, so I have to figure out why that's happening. And there are other places that I can feel it's binding. Working with wood in a cabinet or a set of drawers is a very subtle process. It's easy to take away too much, so you have to use subtlety. So the first thing I'm going to do is analyze the drawer carefully to see if there are any wear spots, because usually, like, see there, the patina is kind of rubbed away a bit. So that's probably one of the binding spots. And this also isn't quite right. There's a nail sticking out of the bottom there that you can see. There's a little track that where the nail has been catching and dragging. So that might be part of the reason it has a rough ride. So I'm just going to pull the nail out first. Tiny old little tack. And always, if you're working with a big honkin' drawer, this process of fitting it and pulling it again is kind of tedious. Okay, well, it's still pretty rough. So let's just examine the inside of the case itself. There's something, it's an old stain or varnish or shellac or something right in there. So I'm just going to take this chisel and, oops, chip it away. That had a fairly high profile, so that also might be hanging up the drawer. There we go. And so I'll try it again. Okay, so it's still sitting funny. So the binding mostly seems to be happening along this front piece. So I'm going to take a little bit off this edge. And there are several choices for removing material from a drawer. You can try using a planer, a little plane rather. An electric one's called a power planer, and the little hand ones are just called planes. I'm not going to choose that though, because it's going to not be quite subtle enough. You can also try using sandpaper, but look at this beautiful oldness that I don't want to disturb that, and sandpaper tends to make a big mess. So I think the most subtle thing I can use is a cabinet scraper. This is my new favorite tool. It costs about $7, and it's got a very fine hook, which you could never see with the bare naked eye, but you can feel it with your hand. It's the metal is you burnish them with maybe the back of a chisel or a wrench, a little steel that's a little bit harder than the cabinet scraper itself, and you just drag a little bit of metal so that it hooks over, and then that catches on the wood. I'll show you on the table, and it takes material off really quite efficiently. So I'm going to try that on this, but I'm going to stay away from this beautiful little edge where it's inlaid. This little tiny light colored bit of wood is actually inlaid, and it's very precious, and I don't want to disturb it. Okay, so I've hardly taken any off, but I'm gonna try fitting it again. Still tight. Okay, I'm gonna take some material off all along this side, not just at this corner. I'm gonna try to take that down a little bit. Okay, now there's a point at which, without cutting into the very front here, which I don't want to touch because of that lovely inlay, there's a point at which you may have to stop before you're entirely satisfied with the job, in which case, try the old-fashioned technique of rubbing a little soap along the edges of the drawer. And sometimes that can be enough to just let it float. And I'm using something really perfumey, which I'm kind of sorry about. But there are soaps that aren't quite so exotic. See, now that's working great. Okay, so that's a fun job, and you know, it really beats the frustration, especially if you've got a drawer that you really have to yank on. It just adds irritation to your day. It's a whole irritation factor that nobody really darn needs. So just have these tools available. This is really a fantastic, great tool, and it can be used for scraping off paint, any kind of finish really, as well as removing wood. And it removes wood in such a way that the final surface that you're left with looks like it's already been sanded, so you kind of skip some steps if you use one of these. Okay, so have fun with your sticky drawers. If it's summer and your drawers don't fit, you haven't gained weight, you have a humidity problem. Planing away the material from the sides of drawers is the most common place to take material away, and you might have to take a lot more than I did. The irritation factor is very low because actually you're diminishing the irritation overall in your life. You know how you have a silverware drawer and you pull it out looking for stuff and the whole thing comes out and all the silverware goes all over the floor? That's pesky. So what I wanted to show you is this cool tip to stop drawers from misbehaving in that way. You get a fender washer. That's what this thing is called. All right? And you get a screw that won't go through it. The head won't go through it. And you screw it into the end of a piece of doweling, right? Just plain old 3/4 inch doweling or whatever size you happen to have. And then you cut it off to the right size, and you end up with something that looks like a little mushroom sort of thing. And then you drill a same-sized hole in the back of that darn drawer that's falling out all the time and push this baby through, and you put one on each side, and you end up with a drawer that cannot be pulled from its roots, right? So you put them like this to slide the drawer into place, and you reach back like this, poke them out, and after that, you don't have that problem anymore, okay? And neither do the teenagers in your home, and those are the ones that most of the time have trouble with this drawer thing. Trouble with their drawers is what they have. We've come to that part of the show where I like to wax philosophical about home repair. Repairs never fail to give pleasure, because even if you're not happy to be doing a repair, you're going to be totally glad when it's over. And your happiness is vital to the outcome of the repair. As Thoreau said, the really efficient laborer will be found not to crowd his day with work, but will saunter to his task, surrounded by a wide halo of ease and leisure. When you watch old carpenters work, they're never in a hurry. They take lots of time out to tell stories, and they'll tease you for being in their way just when you're at your most helpful. But they'll get more done in one afternoon than two inexperienced carpenters can finish in a whole day. And therein lies the difference between an expert and a pert. An expert knows how much she doesn't know, while a pert has no idea but looks good. Therefore, perts get ahead at first, but ultimately the experts have the last laugh. If their tool belts are a bit saggy, it's only because they're loaded with experience. And that makes anything, well, a lot more fun. Until next time on A Repair to Remember, I'm Mag Ruffman.